Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Midnight Murmurs, where dreams melt into shadows and stories float through your sleep, videos to fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying tonight's tale, Voices in the Wallpaper. Let's begin. I moved into the house at Wren Hollow on a Thursday, under a sky so pale it looked washed out, like old linen hung too long in the sun. It wasn't supposed to be permanent, just a place to stay while I got my life sorted. A temporary solution in a quiet countryside, far from the noise I thought was driving me mad. The house had been empty for years, ivy curled around its porch columns like sleeping snakes. The windows stared out at the fields with a kind of tired patience, like they'd been waiting for someone to come back. Inside, the air was still. Not dusty exactly, but old. Like it remembered things it didn't want to forget. Most of the rooms were bare, except for the wallpaper, peeling in some places, soft to the touch in others, like damp parchment. I didn't think much of it at first. It's wallpaper, I told myself, just old glue and faded patterns. The first night was quiet, too quiet maybe. I didn't sleep well, but I blamed that on the change, the silence. City noise had always been my lullaby, even if I'd grown tired of it. It wasn't until the second night that I heard it, a whisper. At first I thought it was the wind. The windows weren't sealed well, and the trees outside leaned close to the house like eavesdroppers. But then it came again, faint, rhythmic. Not quite words, but not quite nothing either. I sat up, listening. It was coming from the wall beside the bed. I pressed my ear against it. Silence. Then as I started to pull away, I heard it again. A soft, dragging sound, like fabric moving, or breath. I told myself it was just the house settling. Old buildings make noise, especially ones left alone for too long. I slept with a light on that night. The days passed quietly. I cleaned, unpacked, tried to make the place feel like it wasn't waiting for someone else. But the nights got stranger. The whispering became more distinct. Sometimes it sounded like a woman murmuring, other times like a man chuckling low, almost beneath breath. I couldn't make out the words, and somehow that made it worse. It didn't happen every night, just enough to keep me on edge, just enough to make me question whether it was in the walls or in my head. I started noticing patterns. The whispers always came from behind the wallpaper, always from the same wall in the same room. What used to be the master bedroom, I guessed. The wallpaper there was different, darker, a floral design, but faded in a way that almost looked like faces if you stared too long. I began to avoid sleeping in that room, moved to the guest room down the hall, but the whispers followed, or maybe I brought them with me. One evening, I was peeling an orange in the kitchen when I noticed something odd. A strip of wallpaper in the hallway had started to curl at the edge. I hadn't touched it, but there it was, peeling, like it was trying to let something out. I stepped closer. Beneath the layer, I saw something. Writing. Tiny letters scratched into the plaster beneath. Almost too small to read. I leaned in, and in the dim light, I could just make out one phrase. They only whisper when you listen. I stepped back, heart thudding. A cold draft moved down the hallway, though none of the windows were open. I didn't sleep at all that night. I started documenting the whispers. I kept a notebook by the bed and wrote down the times I heard them, what they sounded like, anything I could decipher. Most of it was gibberish, but one night I heard a word, clear, precise. Stay. It was spoken softly like a suggestion or a warning. I didn't know which one scared me more. I stayed away from the hallway the next day. I told myself it was just old plaster, some forgotten builder's note, or maybe a prank scratched into the wall years ago. But even as I stood at the bottom of the stairs sipping lukewarm tea, I could feel it, the weight of those words behind the curling paper. They only whisper when you listen. And I had listened. That night I dreamed of wallpaper, endless sheets of it stretching into the dark. I was walking through a corridor made entirely of walls. No ceiling, no floor, just paper, layered and shifting like skin. I could hear voices all around me, rising and falling like distant waves. They weren't speaking to me exactly, but about me. And then, all at once, they stopped. Silence closed in, thick and absolute. I turned around in the dream and someone was standing behind me, pressed into the wall. Their eyes were open, but their mouth had been sealed shut with strips of paper. I woke up gasping. The next morning, I tore a little more wallpaper from the hallway. There were more words beneath it. This time they were carved deeper, not scratched like before. It looked like someone had used a knife or nail, working with slow, painful precision. The sentences were fragmented, broken up between floral patterns and cracks in the wall. He walks between the seams. The paper remembers. Don't peel too much. I stopped after that, folded the loose edge back over and pressed it down with shaking hands. The whispers didn't stop, though. If anything, they grew bolder. They no longer waited for nightfall. I heard them when the kettle boiled, when the wind shifted outside, when I stood too long in the hallway staring at nothing. They spoke in twos and threes now, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying. A conversation I wasn't meant to hear, but was hearing anyway. One evening, while sitting in the living room with every light on, I tried something. "Who are you?" I asked aloud, voice soft but steady. For a long moment, nothing. Then from the corner of the room, a low answer. "Still here." I turned, heart pounding, but the room was empty. The shadows were where I left them, and the wallpaper was still. But I knew it hadn't been my imagination. That voice was real, too real, and I'd made a mistake. A few days later, I found something behind the dresser in the master bedroom. A box. It was small, made of tin. The lid rusted at the corners. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe I was hoping for an explanation. A diary, perhaps. A clue. Inside were scraps of paper, torn pieces of wallpaper with notes scrawled on the back in faded pencil. Each note was dated. June 3rd. Whispers louder tonight. They know I can hear them. June 7th. Tried sleeping in the basement. They followed. June 9th. He's in the wall now, waiting, watching. The last note was darker, written in hurried strokes. June 11th. The wallpaper is not decoration, it's a seal. I dropped the note and stepped away from the box. A seal, not a covering, not a design, a barrier. Something meant to keep something in. That night I dreamed again, the same corridor of wallpaper, but this time I was peeling it, one layer after another, deeper and deeper. Each one revealed another set of eyes watching me, and in the final layer I saw myself, standing on the other side of the wall, but I wasn't moving, I wasn't blinking, I was smiling. The dreams stayed with me, not just as memories when I woke, but as a feeling, like something clinging to my skin, just beneath the surface. Some mornings I'd wake with the sensation that someone had been whispering directly into my ear. That cold breath on my neck, that distant hum of a voice that vanished as soon as I opened my eyes. The box stayed under the bed, untouched. I should have thrown it out, burned it maybe, But I didn't. Instead, I started listening more carefully, not just at night, but all the time, while brushing my teeth, while walking from room to room. The voices had changed. They were clearer now, sharper. They knew I was paying attention. A storm came through late one night. Wind lashed the side of the house and rain battered the windows like fists. I lit candles when the power flickered, then sat on the couch trying to pretend I wasn't afraid. But I was. The wind moaned like a voice stretched too thin. And then I heard something else. Tapping. Not on the window. Inside the wall. I stood up slowly, every instinct telling me not to. The tapping continued. Soft, deliberate, like fingernails on wood. Tap, tap, tap. I followed the sound down the hallway. The wallpaper seemed to shiver as I passed, as if the house were breathing. I stopped outside the master bedroom and pressed my hand against the wall. The tapping stopped, and then I heard it, so close I thought it was inside my skull. "Let me out." I stumbled back. The air felt heavy, like the room was full of smoke even though I saw none. My candle flickered wildly, casting shadows that moved too quickly, too deliberately. I ran back downstairs. That night I slept with the door locked, as if a door could stop something that lives in the walls. So the next morning, I woke to find more wallpaper peeling, not just in the hallway but in the guest room, the stairwell, even the kitchen, like the house was unraveling, or being unwrapped. And beneath every loose flap of paper, there were more messages, more carved words. "He waits between breaths. Don't look directly at him. Too late now." Some weren't carved. They were written in something darker, thicker, something that had dried to a deep brown crust. I didn't touch those. The whispers no longer waited for night. They spoke as I moved through the house, as I sat in silence, as I tried to eat. They said my name, not loudly, not with any emotion, just casually, as if I'd always been part of the conversation. I began to forget what silence sounded like. One afternoon, I sat by the window trying to write. I used to write often. Short stories, journal entries, little thoughts I never shared with anyone. But I hadn't written a word since arriving here. When I finally picked up a pen, my hand moved without thought. I didn't realize I'd started scribbling until I looked down and saw that I'd written the same phrase over and over, in looping handwriting that wasn't quite mine. "He knows you're listening." I started sleeping less. Some nights I'd hear footsteps in the hallway, slow, dragging ones. Other nights it would be humming, a child's voice singing a lullaby I didn't know, but felt like I'd heard before. The worst was when the voices went quiet altogether. That silence was unbearable. It meant something was watching. I'm not sure when I started hearing him. Not them. Him. The others whispered. They muttered, laughed, wept. But he was different. When he spoke, it was clear, cold. His voice had weight. The first time he simply said, "You should never have peeled it back." I didn't leave the house. Not because I couldn't. The car still worked. The road was still clear. There was nothing physically keeping me here, but I didn't want to know what would happen if I left. I'd started to feel it, subtle but certain, that something would follow. Not in a dramatic horror movie kind of way. Nothing that would chase me down a road or appear in the back seat. It was deeper than that, quieter, like the house was no longer a place but a presence, and that presence had attached itself to me. I began searching the local archives online, looking for anything about the house, its address, its former owners. There wasn't much. The house had been built in the late 1800s by a man named Elijah Wren, hence Wren Hollow. He was a furniture maker, known in the area for his craftsmanship, but not much else. No scandals, no tragedies. But the house had changed hands more than a dozen times in the last 70 years. Each owner stayed for a short while, then sold, some abruptly, some without even moving in. No reasons were listed, but in a dusty blog entry, part of a forgotten historical project, I found something else. A single sentence buried in an interview with an elderly local woman. That house has always had a feeling to it, like it's listening. My mother said she heard voices in the paper when she was a girl. That was all. No elaboration, no explanation. But it was enough. It meant I wasn't the first, and maybe not the last. That night, I sat in the hallway across from the master bedroom, staring at the wallpaper. It was moving again. Not visibly, not like something you'd catch on camera, but there was a shift in the pattern, as if the floral shapes were slowly rearranging themselves every time I blinked. Curling toward a center I couldn't see. I tried to focus, to breathe, to resist. But then I heard him again. "Closer," he said. I didn't move. "You've already let me in." My chest tightened, and then from somewhere deep inside the wall, I heard it. Scraping, slow, heavy, like fingernails across stone. I backed away. When the next day, I peeled back a larger section of wallpaper in the bedroom. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't stop. Beneath the paper was not plaster. It was wood. Old, dark, and carved in strange, swirling patterns. So deep they felt like they might keep moving even when I looked away. My fingertips traced them without meaning to. They felt warm. And in the center, scratched with something sharp, was a figure, tall, slender, faceless. He stood between two walls, one hand pressed against either side, as though he were holding them apart. Beneath it was a single word. "Between." I staggered back. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. That night the whispers didn't come, only his voice. "You've opened the seam." I began seeing things in the corner of my eye. Not always, just sometimes, when the house was too quiet, when the light hit the walls just right, a movement, a shadow, a flicker of something behind the wallpaper, like someone pressing their hand from the other side, leaving an impression in the surface, then vanishing. Once I saw the paper bubble out, just for a moment, like it was breathing, and then I heard footsteps upstairs, but I was already upstairs. I'm starting to lose time. I'll blink and hours will pass. I'll find myself standing in rooms I don't remember walking into, holding things I don't remember picking up. This morning I woke up on the floor of the hallway, a strip of wallpaper clutched in my hand. It had fresh writing on the back. "Not your house anymore. I've stopped checking the time. It doesn't seem to matter anymore." Daylight comes and goes behind gray clouds, but inside the house, the hours all bleed together. Nothing feels linear, not the voices, not the thoughts in my head, not even me. Some days I find pages I've written in my notebook, words I don't remember writing, sentences that drift off halfway through, or loop back on themselves like the speaker forgot what they were saying and just kept circling. One line keeps appearing over and over. He sees through the pattern. I rarely sleep now. I lie in bed and listen. The voices aren't whispering anymore. They murmur now, constantly like a chorus under the skin of the house. Layers and layers of voices, too many to count, all speaking over each other in a language I almost understand. Sometimes I think I hear my own voice among them. Sometimes I think I hear yours. I had another dream, if it was a dream. I was standing in the hallway surrounded by stripped wallpaper curled around my feet like fallen petals. The walls pulsed gently like lungs. I could hear the voices humming, soft, low, hypnotic. Then I saw him, at the far end of the hallway, tall, still. His head slightly tilted, like he was listening. His face was smooth and pale, like paper stretched too tightly. No eyes, no mouth. But I knew he was looking at me. And then, with slow, jerking movements, he raised one long finger and pressed it to the wall. The wallpaper split open in a single, silent tear. I woke up with scratches on my hands. They weren't deep, but they were real. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the wall, watching it, waiting for it to move. It didn't, not while I was looking. I don't know how long it had been since I looked at myself in a mirror, but when I finally did, I barely recognized the face staring back. Eyes sunken, skin pale, a smudge of wallpaper glue on my temple I didn't remember getting there. And carved into the corner of the mirror, in small, precise lettering, were the words, "He needs a voice." That night I heard him in the walls again, not whispering, speaking, directly, plainly. "You've peeled too much. There's not enough left to hold me." The house groaned around me. Not the wood, not the pipes, but the walls themselves, like something behind them was shifting, stretching, pressing out. I ran to the master bedroom and found that the carved figure, the faceless one between the walls, was different now. It had a mouth, just a thin line, open, waiting. I should have left. I packed a bag. I grabbed the car keys. But when I opened the front door, there was nothing. Not darkness, not fog, just nothing. No road, no sky. Just the vague suggestion of space, like the edge of a memory. I stepped back inside. The door closed on its own. I don't think the house is in the world anymore. Or maybe I'm not. The seams are bleeding now. Not with blood. Not with anything you can clean. Just something that leaks through the cracks. A presence. A wrongness. The way a room feels after you wake from a nightmare, but can't remember what it was about. It's everywhere now. Even when I close my eyes. Especially when I close my eyes. I tried covering the walls again. I found old fabric in the attic, dusty sheets, stiff with time. I tacked them over the stripped wallpaper, layer by layer, room by room. It didn't help. The fabric moved too. It stretched, pulsed, like the wallpaper had infected it. That night I woke to find the sheets torn from the walls, lying in perfect spirals on the floor, and carved into the wood behind where I'd slept. You were never meant to stay hidden. I started hearing names, not mine, others, spoken softly, lovingly, like memories being recited aloud. Names I didn't recognize but somehow felt, like old dreams resurfacing. I wrote them down. There were dozens, maybe hundreds. Some were written in elegant script, some messy and rushed, like someone had carved them in panic. One name was repeated more than any other. Elijah. I returned to the hidden wooden wall in the master bedroom. The carved figure was still there, mouth now wide, curved into something close to a smile. And something new had appeared, a spiral etched around the figure like a halo. No beginning, no end. I pressed my ear against the wall. I don't know why. And I heard it. Not a voice, a memory. Children laughing, wood being hammered, a soft lullaby. Crying, silence, footsteps. A woman whispering a name over and over until her voice broke. Then the sound of tearing paper. And then his voice. We are bound in layers. You are only the latest. I've started to forget my own voice. I try to speak, but the words come out flat, hollow, like they're echoing through a space I no longer control. Sometimes I find myself mouthing things I didn't mean to say. Sometimes I don't stop. Last night, the final strip of wallpaper came loose on its own. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. It unfurled gently, like a curtain drawn back by invisible hands. Beneath it, the wall was no longer wood. It was flesh, thin, pulsing, translucent. And behind it, something was watching, not through eyes, but through the pattern, through the voice I had given it by listening for too long. I understand now. The wallpaper was never decoration, never just a seal. It was a memory net, a surface meant to trap him, to confuse him, blind him, hold him in static patterns. Every floral curl, every faded vine, every repeating design, it was a cage made of repetition, made of loops, and by peeling it, I set him free. This house is not haunted, it is haunting, a living echo of those who stayed too long, who listened too closely, who peeled too deep. There is no outside anymore. There is only the seam, and he is stepping through. I stopped using the lights, not because the bulbs were dead, some still worked, but the light felt wrong now, too sharp, too loud. It cut across the wallpaper like a scream, and when the room was fully lit, I could almost see the shapes behind the patterns. I didn't want to see them fully. They were more comfortable in the dark. And the voices are organizing. That's the only word I can think of. They're no longer a chaotic murmur. They're structure now, cadence, like they're speaking in turns, building to something, and lately they've been asking questions, not out loud, inside my thoughts. Sometimes while I'm brushing my teeth or pouring water or blinking too slowly, I'll catch a question forming in my head that doesn't feel like it came from me. How long can you last without silence? What does your voice sound like to others? When did you stop being alone? I never answer, but I think they already know. A new room revealed itself yesterday, behind the far wall in the attic. A place I swear didn't exist before. The wallpaper peeled in a perfect rectangle, revealing a narrow door without a handle. I should have walked away. I should have closed my eyes, but I didn't. The door opened when I touched it. Inside was a room no bigger than a closet, lined entirely in mirrors. Not glass. These were old, warped surfaces that reflected in slow, strange ways. The room was cold. The air smelled like mothballs and rain. And in every reflection, I looked slightly wrong. One smiled when I didn't. Another had no eyes. And one, just one, wasn't looking at me at all. It was looking past me, at something in the doorway. I turned around. There was nothing there, but I heard it breathe. I call it the listening room now because that's what it does. It listens. And when you're inside it, you hear everything the house has ever heard. Conversations in languages long gone, footsteps that never reach their destination, names whispered in grief, in lust, in hate. And once, very faintly, I heard myself begging to leave, but I don't remember ever saying it, not yet. That night I dreamed I was wallpaper, flat, fragile, stretched over something immense and twitching underneath. I could feel it shifting, scraping its fingers against my underside, waiting for someone to peel me away. I woke up weeping, with blood under my fingernails, and a single word whispered in my ear, soon. The house has grown colder, but not in the way winter does. This is the kind of cold that seeps through thoughts, that dulls your memories, then makes you unsure they were yours to begin with. I've begun hearing footsteps that match my own. One set on the floor, one just beneath it, walking with me. In the listening room, the mirrors have changed. They no longer reflect me. Each pane now shows a different version of the house. Walls with different wallpaper, rooms I've never seen, a version of the kitchen with an iron stove, a version of the hallway with photos I don't own. I stared into one long enough that I saw someone else walk past in the reflection. Not me, not anyone I recognized. She didn't even notice me watching. When I blinked, she was gone, but her reflection stayed behind for a moment longer. I returned to the archives, desperate for more. Digging into handwritten letters from the early 1900s, I found something hidden in a bundle of correspondence between Elijah Wren and a man named Corbin Glass. One letter stopped me cold. The pattern is not just to trap, it is to shape. It listens until it understands, then repeats until it becomes. We are not meant to complete the wall, Corbin. Only begin it. The voice will choose the rest. Another line had been scrawled in the margin, almost childlike. The more you listen, the less you remain. That night, I heard the voice say my name, not as a whisper, clearly, calmly. Jacob, that's my name, but I hadn't said it aloud in weeks. And then, we have chosen your shape. I don't sleep anymore. I lie still and let the voices pass through me. They don't hide now. They echo openly, bouncing off the walls like sound in a cathedral. And sometimes they start to hum, not a song, just a single long note, vibrating through the wallpaper like it's a tuning fork. I feel it in my teeth, in my spine. A new spiral appeared in the hallway. This one burned into the floorboards. The same looping shape as the one carved around the faceless figure, but larger now and incomplete. I measured it, exactly 6 feet long, exactly 2 feet wide, a human outline. The figure is choosing a body, not building it, remembering it. And the worst part, it's remembering me. The house doesn't just remember now, it replays. In the dead of night, when the house falls into its deep, suffocating silence, I begin to hear things I shouldn't. Not echoes, not whispers, but the faint scraping of movement, like the walls are shifting something old in their depths. The first time I noticed, I thought I had imagined it. It was like hearing a song that was playing far away, too faint to recognize, yet somehow familiar. But then the voices spoke, not in my mind this time, out loud. She's back. I rushed downstairs to the living room, my heart hammering, convinced someone had broken in. but no one was there. And yet the couch cushions were still indented. The floorboards in front of the fireplace had shifted, as if something or someone had been sitting there moments before. The next night, the house replayed something clearer. I woke in the middle of the night to hear soft murmuring from the kitchen. It was muffled, distant, but it felt wrong. I crept out of bed, my footsteps tentative, my breath shallow. As I passed the hallway, the wallpaper curled slightly as if to guide me. When I reached the kitchen, I found nothing but a cold stove, the faint smell of something burning, but no flame. Yet the table in the center was set, 3 chairs, plates half empty, as if they'd just been used, and beside one of the chairs, a figure, a woman. I froze. She didn't move. Her back was to me, her figure faint, shifting in and out of focus like a blurry photograph. Her hands were pressed against the table, her head bent low. She murmured, then whispered my name, Jacob. The sound came so sharply, so suddenly, I stumbled backward into the hallway. The walls tightened around me, like the house was pressing in. I couldn't sleep after that. I wandered the house in a haze, unsure of what time it was. The voices had started again, louder this time, filling the rooms with a constant hum. But something else was different. The walls, where the wallpaper had once been merely strange, now it felt alive. The patterns weren't static anymore. They were fluid, moving, sliding in strange directions, rearranging themselves with every glance. I reached out to touch one. The instant my fingers brushed the surface, I felt something soft under the paper. Not a wall, not wood, flesh. The house wasn't trying to trap me anymore. It was trying to transform me. I ran back to the attic, my legs shaky, my breath shallow. The mirror room had changed. The mirrors no longer reflected me. They reflected her. The woman from the kitchen, her pale face, her hand reaching toward me, trying to touch me. You are not alone, she whispered, her mouth curling in a way that made my blood run cold. I wanted to scream, to break the mirrors, but I couldn't move. I found a new letter in the attic, written in Elijah Wren's hand. The ink was smeared, like it had been written in a hurry, or perhaps in fear. The house remembers. It speaks to those who listen, but it will never stop. Not until you become part of the pattern. The pattern will form you, just as it did me. I realized something then. The house had been here for far longer than I could comprehend. Elijah Wren wasn't just a man who built it. He was part of it. The house had chosen him, and now it was choosing me. I don't know if I can get out anymore. The house is rewriting itself, changing faster than I can process. The woman is still here, watching, waiting. The wallpaper has stopped shifting. Now it stays still, but it feels like it's holding its breath. The house itself is still too, not silent, never silent, but still, like the calm before a storm, the quiet before something old and inevitable awakens. I haven't seen her again, not physically, but her presence is everywhere. Her shadow stretches across every room. Her voice has become the one that lingers the longest. The others are fading, or perhaps they've all converged into her. There is no distinction now, just the hum of her voice. Come closer. I can't fight the urge. Even when I close my eyes, it's her voice I hear, soft and compelling. I don't know how long I've been following it, but I can feel it pulling me, a thread tied to my ribs, pulling me back toward the place I should have avoided, the attic. When I stepped into the attic again, the mirrors were gone. The walls were bare, but the floor was marked, scratched in a way that made it feel wrong. The air smelled of dampness and decay. In the center of the room stood the figure again. Her. Only this time, she wasn't fading in and out. She was solid. I could feel her presence in my chest, like a weight pressing down on my lungs, making it hard to breathe. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. You're becoming part of it. The words weren't spoken. They were felt. The walls weren't the only thing that had changed. I realized with a sickening certainty that the entire house was alive, or it had once been, and it was becoming again, slowly, quietly. It was changing me too, into something older, something tied to the house itself. The patterns in the wallpaper had begun to look like faces, like they were watching me, watching us. I ran back down the stairs, back through the hallways, trying to tear myself away from her. The wallpaper began to move again, but this time it wasn't just the patterns. The wall started to peel away on its own, revealing long, pale fingers creeping from beneath it. They slid through the paper, stretching, twisting, and curling. Slowly at first, then faster. The house was pulling itself open, and something was coming through. I've seen it now. It is him, the one they've been waiting for, the one they were keeping in the walls, the figure Elijah Wren spoke of in the letters, the one who would step through the seams of the house when the time came. And the time has come. He stepped through the wall, a tall, thin man. His face was smooth like paper stretched too tightly, eyes black and empty. He didn't look at me. He didn't need to. He knew I was there. We all did. The last part of the pattern is falling into place. I feel it in my skin, in my bones. The house is changing me. The house isn't breathing. It's no longer just the wallpaper that moves. No longer just the walls that shift. The very foundation seems to exhale with each passing moment. The floors hum beneath me, and the air tastes like something old, something buried for too long. And he is still here, watching, always watching. He hasn't spoken, not with words, but I feel his presence in the bones of the house. He's a shadow now, a whisper in the walls that grows louder every time I breathe in. I can't escape him. The closer I get to the core of this place, the more he pulls at me. I found the final letter in the attic, buried beneath layers of dust and faded paper. Elijah Wren had written it, his handwriting frantic, as if he knew something was coming. I unfolded it slowly, feeling the weight of it, knowing it would change everything. The walls are not just a memory, Corbin. They are a gateway. The house was never meant to be a shelter. It was meant to be a prison, but not for the living. The walls are a trap for the past, for the lost, the forgotten, the ones who never fully left. I did not build this house for comfort. I built it to hold them, to hold him. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. I didn't need to look. He was coming. The final step was being taken. The last pattern was forming. The house was no longer a place. It was a trap, and I was the last piece to be caught. I moved through the halls, each step echoing like a drumbeat in the stillness. The walls shifted again. This time, they seemed to open. Not like before, when they simply peeled away, but like they were inviting me in. I felt a pull. I felt it in my chest, in the pit of my stomach. The pull of the house, the pull of the figure that had always been waiting. The attic door was open now. It wasn't just a doorway, it was an opening. The room inside was darker than any other, colder. The walls were lined with a strange pattern, one I had never seen before. It was a twisting, spiraling shape that felt wrong, like it is alive, growing before my eyes. I stepped inside, and that's when I saw him, the man, the figure that had been waiting, the one who had built the house to contain him. Elijah Wren, but not like I had imagined. His body was withered, fragile, half seen through the dark, a grotesque reflection of the man who had once lived here. His skin had stretched, twisted into the very wallpaper that lined the walls. He was part of the house now, and in him I saw everything, the patterns, the designs, the faces. He was the foundation. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned. It was her again, the woman from the kitchen. She was solid now. Her eyes met mine, cold and empty. No longer a shadow. You're part of the pattern now. Her voice echoed in my head. I didn't need to hear it aloud. I felt it. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. The walls were closing in, folding around me like the last layer of skin, suffocating everything. And then I understood. The house wasn't a prison for Elijah. It wasn't a prison for anyone. The house itself was alive. It was a pattern, endlessly looping, endlessly growing. It didn't need the living. It just needed the past. Elijah had built it to contain the house's voice, to trap it in the walls. But the house had never been contained. It was always feeding, always growing, until it had consumed everything around it. Every soul, every memory, every layer. Tarinanai. I stepped back as the final wall of the house began to fold over me. The pattern in the wallpaper stretched, the spirals turning faster now, like a clock winding down. The figure of Elijah moved closer, and with each step the house seemed to grow. He was becoming the house. His form was fading, pulling into the walls, absorbed by the very thing he had tried to create. And then I realized something. I wasn't just the last one left in the house. I was becoming part of it. The last thing I heard before the world folded into darkness was the hum of the pattern, the hum of the house breathing, and the voice, her voice, whispering again, "Welcome home." The end.